Yes, it is Fresh Cold Radio this morning, and we are joined by the lovely Rita, somewhere destined in the studio, not here, because otherwise she'd be sitting on my lap, and there's not a lot of room here, to say the least, and it might be difficult to speak. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
All right. I'm all right. Yes. I was busy when you first joined in. So, listen, how was your week?
How was my week? My week's been fantastic. It's been, on the whole, sunny, calm, relaxed, taking my clients away for a retreat to Athens this weekend. So, a lot of prep work for that.
How many?
I think there's 10 of us in total going.
Wow.
So, it's not all of my clients, but, some of them.
I assume you're bringing them back with you as well, obviously.
I don't know. They might enjoy it so much that,
well,
a little bit of emigration.
I suspect that's happened before. Now, listen, what are we talking about today?
So today I thought we could talk about the gut-brain axis and essentially why gut health is so important, not just for health in general, physically, but also mental health as well, because there's a very large correlation between the health of your gut, your intestines, as well as your mood.
Yeah.
So your gut and brain are essentially linked by one of the largest nerves in the body, which is called the vagus nerve. And it sends signals in both directions, gut to brain, brain to gut, both ways. And this means that a lot of how we're thinking, feeling in terms of mental and cognitive is very directly linked by the health of our gut and our microbiome. So the gut microbiome is essentially all of the different microorganisms that live within the gut. So the average human being has around 200 different species of bacteria living in their gut. I know it sounds pretty disgusting, but that really most of them on the whole are really good for us. They help us survive. They're great for regulating our system. Equally, a lot of them are essential for our mood in the sense that the happy hormone, for instance, serotonin. Most people have heard of the happy hormone. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter. And around 95% of the serotonin, this neurotransmitter that we produce, is produced not in the brain, but in the gut.
Right.
So it's actually, how we're eating has a massive impact on, are we happy? Are we stressed? How are we feeling? Because most of those are not produced by the actual mind. They're produced in a different way. Obviously, some bacteria is harmful. And, this is where we see things like IBS, we see certain chronic diseases, we see, indigestion, we see heartburn, these kind of things. There are obviously certain bacteria that we don't want in the system, but on the whole, we want to maintain a really healthy living space for the bacteria that are good for us. But unfortunately, the majority of our lives tend to be very conducive to unhealthy gut in the way that we eat, but also just our lifestyle in general.
Okay, well, on that note then, it's been said many times that sometimes when you eat something perhaps you're not supposed to, like you've mentioned chocolate and pizza before, we go, we'll crave the taste, this, that, whatever, is when you have those things like that, and yes, you get the short sugar term rush and all the rest of it, but that affects the brain as well in terms of it gives you a lift, it gives you a boost, only in the short term?
So high sugar, high processed foods don't actually give the brain a boost, as it were. What they do is they give us an instant blood sugar spike. So when we have an instant blood sugar spike, we have an instant energy spike. And there's another neurotransmitter that's produced when we eat, which is called dopamine. So dopamine is that feeling that we're all craving. Everyone wants hits of dopamine. It's the kind of thing that you get when a present arrives, an unexpected gift in the post, that feeling of anticipation and excitement. That's dopamine working. And our bodies are designed to produce dopamine whenever we eat, full stop. Why? Because many, thousands of years ago, when food was scarce, our bodies wanted us to search for food. They wanted us to spend, as much time as possible searching for food. So if we would eat anything, it would give us a dopamine spike so that we go, oh, I want to do that again. It was survival. But if you think of dopamine as gradation, so if you ate, I don't know, a piece of broccoli or some brown rice or chicken, you're going to get what we would have called a standard dopamine hit. So it's for whole kind of foods which aren't manufactured or processed or created by man, they give us a sort of standard dopamine hit. If you are eating something like a chocolate bar, a pizza, a takeaway, something that has been refined and created, either the chemicals usually, or the processes in them, create a much higher dopamine hit. So rather than a standard, we're getting this huge spike of dopamine that whole foods cannot reach. So when we have that chocolate bar, we get this massive spike of dopamine and go, oh my God, that's amazing. I feel fantastic for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
If we ate the piece of chicken, it can't live up to that. It wasn't designed to create dopamine spikes like that. But the more we eat food with these hugely high dopamine spikes, the more our level that we need to feel satisfied of dopamine increases. So it's almost like we start to increase the level of dopamine we need to actually feel that we're satisfied. So now we eat whole foods with a standard dopamine spike and we don't feel satisfied because they're not reaching this heightened, overinflated, artificial level of dopamine that we're now used to expecting from food. So the only way we can get that is from processed.
Right.
So that's slightly off the gut health, but this is why it becomes almost like people will say, oh, well, I have a chocolate bar and I feel like I need another one. Or I won't just have a biscuit, I feel like I need the whole pack. Because every time you eat more and more processed food, the level of dopamine that you need to feel satisfied from that food increases. And so the more and more processed foods you need to hit this ever increasing artificially inflated need. And now the whole food is completely screwed. It can't get you there. It can't make you feel that way. And you're reliant now on processed food for it. So it's slightly off gut health, but it's a really important factor to understand that this food is created to make you by people who have many.
We appear to have a slight delay issue there. Let's see if we can do something. Yeah, I've got a slight break up in the video feed there for a minute. Let's see if we can come back to that in just a second. We'll have a regroup and yeah, because you've gone quiet there, Rita, for a minute. All right, let's see what we can do. Right, I think you're back now.
We're back. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. I do apologise.
That's all right. It's not a problem. But you're back. The reason I put that question to you is it possible then, you're talking about the gut-head relationship and the brain and all the rest of it. Do manufacturers artificially inflate their foods with this dopamine level in order to sell more? For instance, one of the adverts that has come across to me is for Pringles and stuff like that. Once you pop, you can't stop. You know, you can't have one. You've got to have another one. And then you might want to have a dip with it and all the rest of it. Is that their idea of selling in order to do that? Or do you think that the natural's body responses to those things overrides the necessity for the stuff that's really good for us?
Yeah, so when manufacturers create these kind of foods, so dopamine isn't something that they create in the food. What they create is the types of food that trigger a dopamine response. And dopamine response to food is inflated by textures, by flavors, essentially. And so if you think about a Pringle, I don't know, a sour cream Pringle, something like that. It's got this very salty flavor. It's got this really sort of interesting crunch, but actually it then starts to melt away. So things like crisps in general have a crunch, but then a melted sense. They've got an overinflated salt and sodium level. They've got an overinflated artificial flavoring level. And all of these things create heightened responses. A piece of chicken, if you had, let's say, just a piece of plain boiled chicken breast, as opposed to a piece of chicken, highly salted, crispy skin, lots of butter, they're both whole foods, but the one that has the more variety of texture, the more variety of flavor, they're both chicken, but that's going to increase the dopamine response level. This is why chefs spend a long time learning how to create tasty food, because we get more satisfactory levels from it. But whole food, regardless of how you treat it, can only take you so far unless you do massively increase the fat and the sodium level of it, in which case it's already, going down the non-healthy route again. So manufactured foods, they employ psychologists, they employ people who study physiology and hormone levels in order to create the best textural and flavor varieties, regardless of how artificial they are. They employ people who can create foods that will increase this dopamine level, so that we do become, I guess what you could say, addicted to it. We're not addicted to the food, we're addicted to the way the food makes us feel, because unfortunately the poor little piece of broccoli is never going to be able to do that. It's never going to have the ability to give us that, because it isn't artificially created to inflate that sense.
But it comes back to what we said before, is the fact that, isn't it? It's a weird that the stuff that we really should eat that's better for us and all the rest of it doesn't seem to have the same pizzazz about it, or the same, same draw as something that's not supposed to be good for us, something that's bad for us, which is kind of a strange world. Ray's been on from Stephen. He said, how do we stop the need for the dopamine hits? How do we control or modify that so it doesn't make us eat the wrong stuff?
So dopamine doesn't just come from food, it comes from all sorts of different areas. So there's a couple of things that you can do. One is, if you feel that you have this higher level of dopamine need because you have been maybe eating a lot of processed food for a long time, the first thing is not to just cut out processed food. I would never ever suggest that. It's about reducing incrementally, because when we start to reduce incrementally, that dopamine level, that need, starts to reduce incrementally too, until we can get it back to a standard level. Because once we've got it back to a standard level, the good old plain chicken broccoli will be enough. We won't need or have this feeling that we need this sort of more processed artificial food. So it's about starting to, is there one thing a day that you could swap out for whole food? Like if you're having 3 processed snacks and processed meals, can you swap out one snack for a whole food? And then each week, each month, gradually do the swaps. The second thing is also to understand other things give you dopamine hits. So what could you do that makes you feel good that isn't necessarily eating? So for me, and I'm not saying this is applicable for everyone, but for me, what gives me the biggest amount of dopamine is weightlifting. When I go strength training, that makes me feel really, really good. So if I feel that I'm needing something, I'll go and lift some weights. But equally, hugging my children gives me a massive hit of dopamine, gives me a massive hit of serotonin as well. So I will, if I feel that sort of need, because by the way, even people who eat a lot of whole food still sometimes get these urges to go and, binge on chocolate bars. If I ever feel myself getting to that stage, I'll go and hug my kids, go for a walk. I'll go and listen to a podcast, because that also gives me that dopamine hit. Most people will go to one of 3 places for dopamine. They'll go to food/alcohol, they'll go to television, or they'll go to social media. So all three of those will give you overinflated hits of dopamine. And the thing is to recognize what is good for me, what serves me that also makes me feel a certain way. So it's about working that out for you. For some of my clients, it might be swimming. For others, it might be, I've got one client who absolutely loves gardening. And so now it's, if she has that urge, she'll go and pot a plant or water something. She gets the same feeling from it. So it's about working out what else gives you that sense of satisfaction and dopamine than, not just food.
So I'd imagine there's lots of other activities and stuff that you could do that would cause you to have that. I've got a message here. It says, I call him Steve. He says, I take tyrosine, which is a dopamine precursor. Apparently really helps. Never heard of that before. Have you heard of that?
What was it?
It's called tyrosine.
I'm not going to lie, haven't heard of it. So I'm going to go and research now. So I always love learning new things. So if Steve wants to send in any more information, absolutely would love to hear about it. But yeah, so for me, I'm going to go and research. But it sounds like he's...
Oh, no, it's L-tyrosine. Sorry, I misread. L-tyrosine, yes. Really, I really read the L-tyrosine. Okay. Well,
I'll go and have a look.
Yeah, something I've never heard of before. But I think that's given us a somewhat of a good idea to look at that. Apparently, this tyrosine stuff, it helps people with ADHD. So it's that kind tied in with that. So I have no idea. But anyway, so what's next on your agenda for today then? Are you going off to lift some weights because I've depressed you?
Not at all. No, next up for this today is a few bits of loose ends before I go away on Friday to Athens with all of the clients. So yeah, a little bit of admin work, but there will be some weightlifting at some point.
Yeah, it will be. Okay. Well, don't drop it on your toes because that's not...
I'll try.
I bet you dropped things in the past. No, I have.
Oh, I've broken a toe before. Yes, it's happened.
You don't want to be doing that. Rita, listen, that you have a good day and enjoy your week. When you're going away next week, you say?
No, we're going away Friday morning. So I'm picking people up at 2:00 in the morning on Friday, back on Monday night.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. That's all I can say. All right. Well, let's hope things make you feel good and have a good time in Athens. And I'll just warn the authorities you're on the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Take care, Rita. Speak to you soon. Ta-da. Bye.